Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of the Clipper Nation, and thank you so much for joining us on Tuesday, September 12th for the kickoff of Week 4 of Adventure Clipper SAILS, the fourth and biggest adventure so far, and this is the final week, and there is a lot of work to do for the ships to earn points for their teams. We have together with us today Mark Lurie, part of the core team of the Clipper dev team, and he is going to give us a presentation on Clipper's destiny. We'll do a little bit of housekeeping first, but Mark, why don't you say hi, and then we'll get right into it.
Thanks, Ben, and hi, everyone. Really looking forward to the talk today.
Thanks a lot. So before we start this talk, why don't I quickly do a leaderboard check? And you can see that Bloodsail Bandit is in first place with 243,000 points. Next up is Amaranth Argo with 180,000 points. Flying Dutchman 150,000. Sapphire Sphinx with 140,000. Fleet Elite with 137,000. Golden Galleon with 123,000. Bloodsail Bandit, the winner of the last two adventures, is trying to pull away, but don't worry, there are many points to be had this week in Week 4. The way that you can earn points are by attending this presentation and proving that you viewed it on YouTube, answering quiz questions about this presentation. There is a trading competition that we'll talk about after the presentation. You get points not only for signing up, but for placing in the leaderboard. And then, of course, as we're going to learn the message of Clipper, we're going to send our adventurers out into the world to spread that message. And those pirates that do successfully spread that message can earn points for themselves and for their ships as well. So we're going to go right into the presentation, and then afterwards we'll do some giveaways and kind of announcements about what's going on with Clipper, specifically what adventure activities that you can participate in, going a little bit more in depth. But I like to learn, and Mark is going to give us a wonderful presentation about the destiny of Clipper. So let me put that up on screen, and Mark, you can take it away.
Thank you, Ben, and hi, everyone. I'm really excited to talk today about Clipper's destiny because we do a lot of exciting things in the Discord so we can improve ourselves, educate and collaborate with each other, support Clipper. But I think it's really important to tie this to DeFi as a whole, because Clipper plays a really important role in DeFi. I think that DeFi is in trouble, and I think that you can save it by helping Clipper save it. So today I'm going to tell you why I think that. So most of DeFi is actually blue chip tokens, right? There's about, I don't know, ballpark $1 trillion a year that has gone through swaps in DeFi. And 70% of it is actually just between three tokens: ETH, Wrap Bitcoin, and USD stablecoins. That's a lot, right? That's a big part of the market. And yet, we have a DEX that's specialized for stable swaps. And we have a variety of DEXs that try to tackle multiple types of tokens at once. But there's a big problem, which is that today, it's not really sustainable for DeFi to offer these trading pairs. And the reason is that rates are rising. So we hear a lot about interest rates, right? But what does this mean? Interest rates are the cost of capital. It means people can get that rate from very low risk sources, right? Staked ETH, you can stake your ETH to the Ethereum blockchain, or you can do liquid staking and you can earn, ballpark 5%. That's about as close to risk-free as you can get in the crypto space. And you can also buy US treasuries that yield about 5%. That's as close to risk-free as you can get in TradFi. And for the past, many years, we've been living in a very low interest rate environment. Crypto, DeFi summer, has grown up in this low interest rate environment where there's really nowhere else to get, a decent yield on your assets. But today is different because rates have been rising. And what does that mean? It means that DeFi has to do more in order to attract the capital that's necessary to serve these swaps. So that breaks the system. And why does it break the system? Because today the pools for these blue chip swaps, which again are 70% of all swaps, don't yield more than these interest rates. If you look at Curve Try Crypto APYs, they're earning less than 1%. And if you look at Uniswap's ETHUSD pool, which on its own is over half of Uniswap's volume, it only yields about 4%. And that's before impermanent loss, which actually impacts your returns. So this is a big problem because without liquidity, DEXs break and then they can't serve DeFi. And the biggest use to DeFi today is swaps, and more specifically blue chip swaps. So this is a big problem. And you don't have to take my word for it. This is a brief clip that you can play in a moment, Ben, from Dan Robinson, who is head of research at Paradigm and is a co-author on Uniswap's white papers. So Ben, why don't you click that and see if it plays through?
All right, will do. I have to pull out my mic to make it happen. This will go through on the recording, but we want to make sure that live hears it. So here we go.
Welcome, Bankless Nation, to State of the Nation, where we dive down into a topic that is currently floating around the world of crypto.
You know what?
This week on State of the Nation, we are talking.
Why don't you jump forward to 110? Unless, can you hear it if I play it as well or no? 110.45.
I remember projects that we mentioned today.
Of course. Thanks, Dan. I'll give our own disclaimers as well over at Bankless. Crypto is risky. Bankless Nation, you know the deal. You can lose what you put in, but we are headed west. This is the frontier. It's not for everyone, but we are glad you are with us on the Bankless journey. Thanks a lot.
So it looks like this might be more difficult than expected, but we'll paste a link to it in the chat. And I encourage everyone to listen to it after. The short summary is that Dan expresses what most people, I think, who are deep in DeFi know, which is that Uniswap LPs in these blue chip pools lose money pretty much across the board. He's actually not sure why people even provide liquidity to those Uniswap pools. And so that is an existential question. It's not one we can put aside, right? And especially if rates have risen over the past few months, it brings the system closer and closer to breaking. And so because of that, DeFi winter is coming. When there's no liquidity, because liquidity isn't earning money, then we can't really provide the swaps that keep people in DeFi as opposed to CeFi. So what could happen? The answer is that the DEX market will resegment. We've already seen how stable swaps are served by customized design like Curve. And Uniswap is a great design for longer tail altcoin pairs where price discovery happens off-chain. But as we've just discussed, it doesn't produce sufficient yields for blue chip pools. Clipper does. Clipper is the DEX for blue chips. And as this system breaks, I think it will naturally become dominant for blue chips, right? So why do I think that's the case? Because it has three things: best prices, LPs who make money, and a protocol that actually makes earnings so it can support its continued growth. These are really three simple things, right? But surprisingly, they don't exist in DeFi today. So let's go through each. First, Clipper's architecture has best prices. We ran a sampling study where we pinged 0x, which is behind Matcha. They have an API. It's an aggregator API. And we pinged it for several days in the last couple weeks. And for a $10,000 trade between USDC and ETH. And the results proved how powerful Clipper's architecture is. Over 90% of the time, Clipper won the USD to ETH and the ETH to USDC leg. And so this kind of shows as clear evidence that Clipper offers best prices. Second, LPs make money. So if you look at Curve's crypto pools, which are pretty much the most similar in assets to Clipper's core pool, you can go to curve.fi right now and look at their crypto pools. Their base APY is under 1%. Right now, they reward it with some incentives, which you can see on the right, but that's not necessarily sustainable. And also, even so, it's less than where rates have risen to. And so that's a big problem. That's the existential problem in DeFi today, right? Clipper exceeds the cost of capital in the market, right? In the most recent week, it's yielded over 15%. And so because it exceeds the cost of capital, it can attract and retain liquidity and provide the service that DeFi needs, which is to serve Bluechips. And finally, Clipper as a protocol earns enough money to support its continued growth, right? If you go to Token Terminal and you look, you'll see Uniswap hasn't flipped on its fee switch and actually doesn't earn any money. Curve similarly actually loses an enormous money each month because it spends more in incentives than it brings in fees, right? And Clipper actually earns earnings. So that's about 25,000 in the last month. Now, where does this go? It goes to protocol owned liquidity right now, and it goes to the endowment of Admiral DAO, which can be used at the decision making of the members, which is all of you. So this enables Clipper to grow, right? And these are the three components that are necessary to make any system work, right? It's really quite obvious. You need traders to get good prices, you need liquidity providers to make it worth their while, and you need the protocol to be earning money instead of losing money. And what's interesting about this, right, if you go back to the protocol making money, as liquidity grows, Clipper becomes more competitive on larger trades, right? So let's say Clipper gets to 50 million in TVL. It will be competitive on trades up to $50,000. That will attract a lot of volume almost overnight from DEX aggregators like 1inch, right? And that provides additional earnings to the protocol. And so as Clipper's TVL grows, that number increases a lot, and that goes into protocol and liquidity and the endowment. And so this is a really big flywheel, which can help us all as a community accomplish our mission. And I just want to emphasize how big this impact can be, right? $1 trillion in DeFi volume, 70% is blue chip pairs. That's 700 billion in volume that has an existential crisis right now. And Clipper can serve that as the blue chip DEX. And that's the impact that Clipper can have in DeFi, right? And that's really important because DeFi is really important to the world because it's how we can create fair and free markets that are accessible to all. And when markets are accessible to all, we can have shared prosperity and people can advocate for their own rights. This is the impact that Clipper have, but it requires you, right? It's not something I can do on my own. It's not something any one person can do on its own. So here's what it requires. First, we need everyone to strengthen their membership in Admiral DAO. So as a Navy, we are as strong as possible. That means participating in governance, voting, proposing good ideas, contributing your skills. 2 is tell the world about Clipper's yields. We need to permeate this into the market so everyone understands that this is actually a great place to park your money, right? It's not financial advice, but it's a great place to put your ETH, BTC, and USD and get great yield from the rebalancing process. And to do that, you can refer your friends, right? Evangelize, try to tell people how much better these yields are than Curve or USD, because that's what's going to get the TVL up and enable Clipper to manifest this destiny. So please refer friends, and we're going to be launching a referral program shortly. And finally, that will enable you to save DeFi. And that's the important thing, and that's what we're all here for. So I really hope that you can manifest Clipper's destiny, because that's what it's going to take.
Thank you so much, Mark. So it seems like the purpose of the presentation is that DeFi really is facing an existential crisis, which is that can't compete with risk-free rates, LPs are losing money, and Clipper can save DeFi by beating those rates. Is that fair? Is that a fair summary?
That's right. And if we all work together, then Clipper can be really, really enormous protocol, right? It's permissionless. It solves the existential problem that DeFi is facing, and it can make a really big impact.
Right. So if Uniswap were the place for, swapping long tails, and Curve is the place for handling stables, then Clipper could be the place for Bluechip volume, which I think I saw from one of your slides. That's 70% of all of DeFi of a trillion. So that could be potentially $700 billion of volume that Clipper could dominate.
That's right.
All right. Well, what a pleasure. Thank you for your presentation. I invite the audience to ask any questions, but while we wait for them, you mentioned in your presentation that you want to strengthen the membership in Admiral DAO. So I think it's pretty exciting what's going on within the community, in that there are these community-led proposals that are going through Discord, going through all the phases of governance. And there's actually a few of these proposals have made it to both Snapshot and also the temperature check. And I wonder if we could take a moment to go through a couple of these proposals, not only to introduce them to people who may have not seen them before, but so you and I could give our thoughts on it, because we're members of the community like anyone else. And then we could also talk about, as these proposals come through, what is the process for actually getting them in the dev pipeline. Do you got time for that for us, Mark?
Of course.
Yeah, great. All right. So I think the way I'll do a very brief intro to the governance process by taking us through Discord. So let me pull up a Discord in browser, and I'll bring that over to the screen. And in our Discord, there is one of the top channels is called Community Governance. And in Community Governance, there's a welcome channel which kind of links you to the relevant docs and gives you a brief intro on the phases of governance. But the place to start, first of all, is owning SAIL token, because that's what allows you to be a member of the DAO. That's what allows you to participate in governance. Anyone who owns SAIL can make a proposal. And we have a very neat proposal submission forum. So in here, you can see that some of the adventurers are proposing how should the Adventure 4 rewards be distributed. There is also a proposal on how to handle the collab grant. And then we also talk about operators. Operators are the people that kind of do the admin and execution function of Clipper and have roles and responsibilities, and we need to hold elections for that. So the community is designing how to hold elections. And some of these have made it through then goes to the temperature check, which is the second phase of governance. And if there are enough positive votes and not enough votes against, then it'll head to Snapshot for the final on-chain vote. And once it passes the on-chain vote, there's a waiting period, and then it gets plopped into the kind of the waiting period for when does it get implemented and executed. So why don't we take a proposal that's still in the proposal submission forum. This is during the discussion phase where it's posted in here for people to make their comments. And one that I wanted to visit was a proposal made by Risky Jambalaya. And he wanted to talk about protecting on-chain Snapshot votes from Sybil attacks. And let's see if I can make this a little bigger. But briefly, the big idea is he's proposing a temporary maximum 6 months prerequisite for governance snapshot voting in order to prevent Sybil attacks on-chain snapshot governance vote. And the prereq is that only SAILS on mainnet will be eligible to participate in snapshot governance vote. This prereq would be temporary until other eligibility criteria such as staking stale for a period of time is adopted. So, and I haven't gone through the argument so far, but my guess is he wants to limit it to mainnet until we get more of these requirements, because it costs money to move stuff around on mainnet. And with quadratic voting, I think that you are disincentivized from moving your sale around to multiple wallets to increase your voting power, because the cost of that is too high. But now that we're on L2s, there's a chance that people can spread their sale around and artificially increase their voting power, which is, I think, what he describes in the problem. And the evidence that he talks about is total votes in the first proposal is around 9,000. Assuming a proposal can pass or fail with around 9,000 votes, it takes 9,000 accounts with one sale. This is currently costly because of mainnet, but when it's available in other chains, this can be achieved at low cost. For example, the situation when the price of a single sale is 0.6 of a cent and the transaction cost is 2 cents on Polygon to purchase one sale. 9,000 sale on 9,000 wallets could be purchased for a cost of $234, $54 for the token, $180 for transaction cost, and then they're saying that any vote could pass. So we took a lot of time in the Clipper governance and the DAO, and there's a lot of thought that went into the governance process, and we came up with quadratic voting in order to discourage whales, because Clipper has grown up as a place for the everyday trader. And now Risky Jambalaya is saying that the Clipper's noble intentions could possibly be taken advantage of. So I took you briefly through the proposal. I just want to get your initial thoughts. I'm putting you on the spot a little bit.
I think this is a great example of community coming together and making sure that we have appropriate governance. I think it's a great idea. Certainly not one that I thought of myself. And, I really commend Risky Jambalaya for identifying the issue and suggesting a solution. Solutions are really helpful.
And I see Risky's in chat, and I'm curious of Risky's thoughts or your thoughts, but the idea, I suppose, is that the sale would be locked up, I guess, to make sure that you can't just move it among wallets. But I'm wondering where the maximum 6 months comes from, or what an appropriate time would be. Do you think that's just choosing an arbitrary number, or either you, Mark, or Risky, raise your hand, or is there a certain amount of time that actually makes sense?
I'd be curious if Risky Jambalaya has thoughts, but I think locking up is a great idea, and it may dovetail very well with another proposal that was introduced around real yield tokenomics.
Okay, let's check that out. Is this the staking program, I'm imagining?
Yes,
Perfect.
I believe so.
And this, by the way, I'm looking at it right now in our proposal forum, because that's just the first place that it was posted. But I would like to say that it made it through temperature check, and it also passed on Snapshot. It was posted on August 30th, and with 95% of the vote, it reached quorum basically immediately, and overwhelmingly people passed this. So this is now a proposal that the community has come forward and say, we want to do this. So Mark, as you talk about how it dovetails nicely, we can also use this time to discuss implementation and execution procedures. And Risky Jambalaya says he's available to speak. Risky, you're welcome to chat. If you want to actually come chat on stage, I'll invite you to speak. But go ahead, Mark.
Well, I think it would be great if Risky Jambalaya
here
came
he is.
up
Welcome. Community members on stage. Feels really good. Welcome.
Hi, do you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you great.
All right. It's good to talk to you both. So the 6 months timeline was just to give us enough time to find a permanent solution. such as staking or other solutions that the community can have time to think about it.
So you're saying this is more of a stopgap measure until staking or something like that comes
Right,
out.
like this is just a temporary solution, for example, to have it. And I think I proposed like, I mean, three different solutions, like that one of them is just to have it on mainnet, or like, I mean, have a minimum of like 1,000 sale to be able to vote for a few months until like other uh, other solution, a permanent solution can be agreed.
And am I understanding correctly that this comes out of the fact that SAIL is now bridged to L2 and L2 is cheaper? Is that the main cause for concern here?
Right, right. If it was only on mainnet, if sale was only on mainnet, this wouldn't be an issue because it costs money. For the transaction cost is just too much to send like few sale in each wallet and try to uh, basically change the votes. But I think like with low transaction cost in L2, I mean, if someone really likes to do it, they can do it. I'm sure that the Security Council can prevent uh, these things, but then this was just to prevent uh, any attacks on our governance.
Well, it's certainly a good suggestion. You know, it's actually been sitting in the proposal for a long time. So if you've got enough feedback, and I imagine that I know that only operators are allowed to post the temperature check, but I imagine you're an operator. You could move it along to temperature check so we could move this thing now that we actually are launched on L2. It may be important to protect Clipper.
Sounds good.
Yeah. And Mark, so one solution that Risky posits is locking up for 6 months. And you said this could dovetail nicely with staking. Do you want to go ahead and speak a little bit about the staking proposal, Mark?
Well, I think I misunderstood. I think a stopgap measure sounds fine and makes a lot of sense. If it were staked, that's another interesting way of doing it. For example, Curve, you get voting power for staking and locking up your CRV. In 1inch, you get unicorn power for locking up your 1inch tokens. And so that's something that can help prevent Sybils and be a good mechanism for governance. So I think that's, also a potential longer term solution.
So putting you on the spot, if you had to think, and I don't know that there's a right answer here, but do you have any preference? It sounds like there's three solutions posited so far, right? Have a minimum amount of sale, maybe 1,000, have a max, some period of locking, so 6 months, or staking, which gives you voting power. Is there any particular way that you lean?
Well, I think
what the community thinks too.
I think staking is something that requires a bit of time, to Risky Jambalay's point. Mm-hmm. So that might be the ultimate answer, but let's put that aside for now. And so the options are a minimum amount or just removing L2s. It's tough because a lot of people have received their tokens on L2, and we want to encourage governance. I wonder if you could do a minimum on L2 and then anything on L1. Yeah. And then you have the best of both worlds.
And we do have a little bit of a built-in protection because all you need is to hold sale to vote. You do need a minimum amount of sale to actually post on Snapshot. So while once it's posted, sure, I suppose if you had enough capital, you could spread your votes to win any vote. But you would need an ally with enough votes up there to get that post up there in the first place.
It's true. Well, I think there's no right answer, but I think what's especially exciting about this is people are proposing ideas, and there's a lot of work that goes into proposing ideas, and so I think Risky Jambalaya should decide what he thinks is best from this discussion, post that, and that's what the community will, vote and engage in. And I certainly will defer to whatever the community decides.
Yeah, that's a great point. So Risky, it looked like your proposal, you gave a lot of kind of options. Now that we've had some community feedback, maybe you could go back, edit the proposal, put forward one particular solution. Let's see if the community wants to do it for the next few months before we get staking involved. So the last point on governance...
And I trust your judgment a lot, so I'm sure whatever you come up with,
the wisdom of the
is gonna be
masses, the wisdom, especially within this community, the wisdom of the masses does feel like it can be trusted with a little bit of expert guidance at the beginning from people like Risky Jambalaya. But to that point, because we said it takes a while for staking to get going. And again, there's no right answer here. And it's not like anyone here is authority because everybody is governed by the will of the people. Like perhaps someone will need to put a proposal on what an execution or implementation plan should be. But I wonder, Mark, I only ask you because I saw you brought this up in chat. So as you can see, our governance channel is pretty active. We have a lot of proposals and anyone can propose. All you need is one SAIL token. And as long as it makes a temperature check and snapshot, it passes. And then based on the bylaws, Clipper's bound, or the DAO is bound to move forward. What are your thoughts on how we move, potential ways to move forward on these proposals and executing them and determining what should go in the dev priority pipeline?
So I think this is actually a pretty standard process in organizations where you come up with a set of things you want to do, and then, and those get approved as things that that the organization wants to do, right? So that we have here in these proposals. Then there's a second separate conversation, which is, okay, there's only so many resources. We need to prioritize, right? What are we going to work on first with scarce resources? And that is a separate decision-making process, right? That's how you establish a product pipeline and a backlog and a prioritization. And I think that should be up for the community as well, right? The community should vote not just on what they want to do, but then on what order they want to do it in and where they want to focus efforts. And I think what that requires is a sufficient number of things that we want to do so that we can prioritize them, right? It's really burdensome to do that on every day, but you can establish a product pipeline every month or every quarter, certainly every year, although I think that's probably too long. And so what I expect is, as these proposals pass, we then have another proposal, which is here's the pipeline for the next few months, and we sort and order them, and then the community votes on that.
That's a great point. And what I'm putting up on screen now is I have the admiraldao.eth, the snapshot page. So this is where the proposals go when they make it on chain. And you can see we currently have 4 active proposals, and we've had 2 proposals that have passed. That's deploy Clipper on the Mantle network, which I believe happened. And then also the staking program. But
I think like some of this is low hanging fruit, right? Like developers can allocate their time if they want to just knocking things out. If someone wants from the community wants to just do this, then one of these, then they're welcome to propose it, or propose actually writing the code. They can even apply for a grant. So some of these people, can just do if they want to, but I think, quickly will overwhelm that, and then we'll need a product pipeline.
Right. And I bring this up because that product pipeline proposal process, that's something that can be put to the community by any member of the community. And certainly we have very active people. We have the captains, we have the community leaders, and we have operators. And of course they take an important role because they've stepped up to that role. But this is kind of a call to the community that you see these 4 proposals and we need to determine what the priority is. So there's no reason why any community member can't put forward their proposal and say, like, this is what I think. I think we should handle the collab grant first and then do operators election, or whatever you think, and argue it. And then we'll have healthy debate within the governance channel and we'll move from there. Okay, so Mark, your presentation was lovely. It was so cool to have Risky come up and talk about his proposal. We've actually eclipsed the standard 30 minutes that we generally
Good point.
keep
Although
for
I
these
do
times.
just want to ask if Risky Jambalaya has any last thoughts, because I realize we didn't give him the space to respond.
Yeah.
No, I think, like, yeah, just to clarify, that 6-month timeline that I mentioned was not necessarily for staking. It was just a temporary, like, a solution to mention that, I mean, this is just for a few months until, like, we have a permanent solution. So basically, like, I mean, the timeline is open until we find the solution. And I mean, I was thinking about it more, and then you're right. Like, since many of the community who received airdrop, they received it on L2. Maybe it's better to have a minimum number of sales for now. Like, for example, like 1,000 sales to be eligible to vote. But one other thing I wanted to check is that, I mean, which one of these two options would cost less or requires less effort? Because this is a temporary solution, so it's not something that I don't think, like, I mean, it's the dev team should spend too much time on this.
I think it might be something that can be just configured in Snapshot.
Okay.
So let's maybe you can DM and we can just get that question answered.
Right. And I don't know if Rusty is in chat, but Rusty was integral in setting up kind of Guild XYZ and Snapshot and things like that. So maybe we can work with him, but I think we do need the will of the people before we move forward on it, right? So we come to a solution or propose a solution and see what the consensus of the community is, and then we can implement and execute it.
Yeah, and I just want to emphasize that in order for governance to work well, we can't be looking for perfect solutions. We have to give a lot of credit and weight to the person who, is stepping up and proposing things. And, they're going to have to make some decisions on their recommendation. And even if they're not what each of us thinks is perfect, we should try to defer to them as long as it's like 80% of the way there.
That's a great point. So I just want to navigate our last few minutes together, because I do think there's a couple important things I want to talk and get on the recording before we go. But so everyone knows, we're going to, after we speak for about a few more minutes, I'll end the recording. We can hang out and talk a little bit more in depth about the activities and maybe do some giveaways. But I have open on the screen the instructions page for week 4. And one of the big activities, so Mark gave a wonderful presentation about how Clipper can really rise to prominence as one of the big 3, right? The place for blue chips. And our hope is that the adventurers and all of Clipper members are going to go out and give that message out. So there are specific tasks that we have given the adventurers, but this is for all of the Clipper army, basically. And the 3 kind of main ways, and really be creative. Go out and write songs to tell people to come to Clipper. And you can work on what the actual message or the pitch should be. But what we're asking people to do, or what we're suggesting people do, is DAO treasury management proposals is one, in the style of the 1-inch proposal, where we're basically saying, look, Clipper's the best place to park capital for individual people. Why shouldn't DAOs park their capital in there as well? And if other DAOs are as actually democratic as Clipper is actually created to be, if we put a good proposal in there and saying, look, put some of your money in Clipper, that could really increase the TVL. And as Mark said, as TVL goes up within Clipper, we capture it. It feeds upon itself. And then the other 2 ways to spread the message, and of course it needs to be accompanied with the message of why people should do this, but we want people to put their money to deposit liquidity into ETH mainnet and also the L2 pools. The main message being it's the best place to do that. LPs make money, best prices, best fees, best gas. And as TVL increases, Clipper grows and can capture really a lot of the blue chip percentage of the trade volume in the market. Mark, is there anything you want to speak about in terms of Clipper community members going out beyond Clipper and evangelizing and spreading the message?
I think this is the part that the community has to do together, and I think we'll all benefit if we all do it. So there's a referral program in collaboration with Fuel.xyz, which will be shared soon. And I encourage people to be creative in how they write proposals for, Clipper as a place for other DAOs to manage their treasury. I don't know the best way to frame or pitch this. There's some ways, on 1inch, there's a proposal. That's one way to do it, but there's other. It's a diversified portfolio. That's how, you should reduce risk. There's gains from rebalancing. The yields are very high. It's really, I think it's up to the community to figure out the hook that will matter the most or be the most persuasive.
All right. Well, thank you so much to Mark. Thank you so much to Risky Jambalaya. Thank you to the 135 people at Peak that came to this talk. Please go out and spread the word of Clipper so that we can become, we are the community. We can be the best place in all of DeFi for blue chips. And that can be an incredible percentage of the DeFi landscape. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to say goodbye to our recorded audience. If you want to stick around to just hang out and learn what the activities are for this week and do some giveaways, please do. But as for our YouTube audience, thanks so much. Signing off and have a great afternoon.